It's been just over a month now and still no sign of 19-year-old Dylan Rounds. He went missing on Saturday, May 28th. According to an arrest affidavit made on June 29th, a friend of the Rounds family has been arrested and is due in court this upcoming week. This is the second person that's been arrested who has been in contact with Dylan Rounds. More details on that in a minute. But first, I want to address a fact of one of these people. His name is Chase. We know him as the barefoot hitchhiker. He's the one who flagged Dylan down. He asked him to use his phone and to hitch a ride. Now, I don't know what happened, but after my last video, I got an influx of people around like the same hour accusing me of misinformation. So I want to clear this up. Initial reports by Dylan's mom, Candice Cooley, said that Dylan didn't give the hitchhiker a ride. But then she did another interview later on in June, I think it was June 9th, and she said that yes, in fact, he did give this hitchhiker a ride, and that Dylan didn't tell her that. Have a look.
Dylan called me on Wednesday. I was at work, and
The Wednesday before?
Wednesday, May 25th, Dylan called me, and he's like, "You'll never believe what happened, Mom." So he tells me this story about this guy running out of the middle of the desert. Looks like he's been out there for days, bloody, scratched up. So when we came into town and I had that information, I'm trying to figure out who's this guy he had this run-in with. Well, Dylan told me he did not give him a ride. Dylan did give him a ride that day. Dylan told me he did not, so that was my motive. Here my son is, he leaves this guy out in the middle of the desert, then we find, with no shoes, then we find his boots, but Dylan did give him a ride, and we know that for a fact, but he's not going to tell Mom that, because then Mom's going to be angry and be like, "Why are you picking strange people up in the desert?" Mm-hmm. So he left that out, but we do know he gave Chase a ride, so then there goes your motive.
Chase was later arrested on an unrelated charge. The next guy I want to talk about is a guy who was also recently charged. His name is James Brenner. In a court document written by the FBI, it states that James and a guy with his initials DH were family friends of Dylan and his family. So I'm going to get into the timeline and show you what went on with James. Saturday, May 28th, we know that's Dylan's last communication with his family. Hasn't been seen since. Monday, May 30th is when he was reported missing. On Tuesday, June 7th, that's when James Brenner was interviewed by Batchelder Sheriff's County Office. So was DH. In the court document, it states that James was squatting in a trailer, and the trailer is located on the same land as where the grain truck is. It states, "The shelter for the grain truck was reported to be on a parcel of land owned by Box Elder Land and Livestock, owner initials JC, and is adjacent to two other parcels that are owned by SH and RI. These parcels are open to each other and collectively used together. The subject in this case, an adult male named James Brenner, has no ownership in the land parcels mentioned above and is squatting in a trailer located on the land. The missing 19-year-old male DR's property is a 5-mile walk towards the southeast of where Brenner was currently living. Brenner and another Lucin resident DH were considered family friends of DR and his family. In searching for the missing 19-year-old male, Brenner was interviewed by Batchelder on June 7, 2022. DH was also subsequently interviewed by law enforcement. Now on Wednesday, June 8th, very next day, that's where they find a .22 Winchester rifle. James has a criminal history. He got in trouble back in 2011, and he spent 33 months in jail for being in possession of firearms and ammo. And there's also more. He not only got in trouble in 2011, but he also got in trouble back in the 80s. This is where it kind of all stems from. I have documents, and I want to give a shout out to Stephanie. Thank you so much for giving me this information. It really helps. You know I appreciate you. So back to the documents, it says, James Brenner, having been convicted of the following crimes punishable by imprisonment for a term exceeding 1 year. And it said, for one, malicious shooting in circuit court for Prince George's County, Maryland, on or about October 2nd, 1986, and number 2, possession of a firearm by a felon in state court in Maine on or about August 30th, 1990, and he knowingly possessed firearms, and it has a whole host of firearms. So he gets in trouble in 86, not supposed to have firearms. 1990, he has firearms, so then he gets in trouble for that. Then we fast forward 2011, he gets in trouble for, yep, you guessed it, having firearms. And then here we are, he's not supposed to be having these firearms, and lo and behold, he has firearms. He also, in my research, learned to state hop because there's quite a few states involved. Now, a few days later on June 11th, Batchelder requests the help from the FBI. On the 16th, Batchelder and the FBI execute a search warrant on the trailer where James was squatting. Here's what the document said. On June 16th, the BECSO, with the assistance of the FBI, executed a search warrant at the trailer where Brenner was living. During that search, ball ammunition, ignition caps, black powder, and speed loads, all related to muzzle loading, were located and photographed in the trailer, but the items were not seized at this time by Batchelder. There were no muzzle loader firearms located in the trailer at that time. The document says a friend and neighbor of Brenner, D.H., was interviewed by Batchelder and the FBI. D.H. says that after Dylan went missing and after that initial interview on June 7th, that James brought over to his house 3 black powder guns and he asked him to safe keep them. It says on June 20th, Brenner brought 3 black powder guns over to DH's residence and asked him to safe keep them. When DH asked why, Brenner stated that he needed to do this for his own safety and that the last time he had trouble with the law, they took everything from him and he did not want the things he had left to be taken again. DH agreed to store the muzzle loaders for him. At the time of the interview, DH turned over the 3 muzzle loaders to Batchelder, who booked them into evidence. Now on the next day, June 21st, DH gets interviewed by the FBI yet again. He then tells them that James also brought over a .22 caliber rifle. Around the same time, he brought over these muzzle loaders. And DH says to the FBI that initially he didn't mention this because he explained that someone who owned the rifle and was in the trailer before James owed him money. And James took possession of this rifle when he started squatting in this trailer. And DH did also say that he knew that James was not supposed to have firearms because of his background. So DH turns over this rifle and the case and says that James also asked him to store it for him. It was said the rifle is a Winchester and it was loaded with 5 rounds and no serial number. Now, on this same day, there's another search warrant that's executed on James's trailer. It says during this warrant they got a muzzle loader, they had ammo, and they also had ignition caps, 4 pounds of black powder, and speed loads, and booked them into evidence. So now we have 2 people arrested in Dylan's circle. But remember in an investigation that they first start at the home and then they work their way out. And here they're hitting up that inner circle as they do in investigations. Right now, these don't seem to be related, right? The first one, he got in trouble for something unrelated. Now we're on number 2, and he's getting in trouble for holding firearms, and he's not supposed to. But as they go along, we'll see what transpires. Do you know any other information on this case of what we're talking about today? Let me know in the comments below, or if you prefer, you can email me at itsacrimeandashame@gmail.com. You can check out my other videos on Dylan Rounds right here, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you soon.